How's that? Any good? There we are. Now I've got a meter. Hey, there we go. Oh, Macca. G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap. Brought to you by CrowCast, of course. And what a disastrous start that was, as per usual. But Macca, it wouldn't be the same, would it? If it wasn't a disastrous start.
Well, I think, we're consistent.
I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I've completely, all my bloody settings have all just gone absolutely kaput. Where are you, Macca? Give me a sign. Give me something.
I'm just helpless, mate. Just hanging around waiting.
Oh, there you are. How you going?
Same as I was all the time. I've been sitting here.
Jesus. What a freaking nightmare. Welcome everyone to the Weekend Wrap. Sorry about that. About 20 false starts there. Hopefully the audio's coming through all right. Mac, how you going?
Yeah, no, I'm doing well. Somebody says my image missing now.
No, you're there. Just give it a second.
Okay.
All right. Look, lots to talk about tonight. It was a bit of a disaster after a promising start today, Macca. How'd you see it?
Well, look, it was a game of two halves, wasn't it? I mean, we actually dominated the first half, and we didn't really capitalise on the domination that we actually had. We should have been a lot further than we were.
Yeah.
It was 20 scoring shots to 12 and up to half time, and we led by 28 points. Now, some of those shots that we missed, they were pretty easy shots by AFL standards. So probably that lead could have been probably 2-3 goal more. Whether that psychologically would have had any effect, I don't know. But if we compare that half with the second half, and you've got to take into account that GWS had 3 injured players that didn't take part at various stages of the second half. they ran all over us in the second half, and I thought that our performance in the second half made us look like we were going to be the 18th team in the competition. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. I can only probably find 3 or 4 players that were honest in that last quarter.
Yeah.
Last half, sorry.
Yeah, look, I think the lack of scoreboard pressure that we failed to put on because we missed shots really told in the end. But look, before we get into all of that, let's get into the weekend results really quick. We won't spend too long on this. And on Thursday night, of course, we had the 0-0 draw between Richmond and Carlton. That was a woeful game, 8-10 to 8-10, 58 points. Early days, Mac, I can't see either of those teams hitting the scoreboard, but it is round one.
Slightly disagree. I think there'll be a real chance to be in the final 8. It was like an early hit out, and Richmond had a lot more of the ball than Carlton, and a lot more in the ball in their forward 50, dominated in the forward 50s by comparison. It's just that Carlton have got much more. Richmond have got one quality forward, and Carlton have got 2 or 3, and that was the difference in the long run.
Now we're not spending too long on these, Carlton, Mac. We're not spending too long on these.
Richmond had their chances to win. So did Carlton. It was a draw. Everybody's happy or everybody's sad.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say is that Carlton did have a couple of big mids out, which didn't help. On Friday night, Collingwood playing very entertaining football.
Yeah,
ran over Geelong 19-11, 125 to 16-7, 103. A margin there of 22 points.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief then. It was very, very. I thought it was a great game actually. I enjoyed watching it, and Collingwood ran all over Geelong at the end. I think they kicked the last 8 goals of the game, and the players that really were very good to watch. DeGoey was very good, and the Dacos brothers, well, they're an outstanding pair of players.
Yeah, very good.
Collingwood.
Matt, come on, man. We don't care about these things. Just a 1-minute bloody summary, thanks.
Okay. Right.
North Melbourne getting up over a fast-finishing West Coast, 12-15-87 to 12-10-82.
Yeah, North Melbourne feeling uncomfortable because they won. They're usually on the bottom. I got a heck of a good kid in Sheasel. I think he had 34 possessions, and they're going to be. They'll probably be the bottom 2 sides, or they'll be down there.
Worst thing about that game, Macca, is that I left Sheasel on the bench in my dream team, so there was 118 points down the toilet.
I had him on the ground.
Yeah. Then we had Port. After Brisbane got away to a start, or not a start, but certainly got away in the second quarter, Port just absolutely steamrolled them, 18-18, 126 to 11-6, 72. Margin of 54 points, and Brisbane just looked really underdone, in my opinion.
Well, I thought Port looked very, very good, really good. And Horn Francis, a lot have been said about him, good and bad, but difference between an unhappy player and a happy player, and you saw it in that particular game. He's going to be very classy for them. And unfortunately, I agree with others. I thought Port looked good. And on the other hand, I thought that Brisbane, they were very, very ordinary, really ordinary.
Yeah, they just looked underdone. The same with Geelong in the game prior. Geelong looked short of fitness and then lost a couple of players. But, round one, not much to read into it, Mac. March premiers, we know what Port are like. Melbourne getting up over the Western Bulldogs pretty comfortably, 17-13, 115 to the Bulldogs 9-11-65.
I think Melbourne are a very good case of illustrating what we don't have, which is a classy ruckman and a really dynamic midfielder in Oliver and a Rolls Royce in Petrarca, and that's it. When you've got those going for you, you've got a great start in the game.
Yeah, it was pretty insipid by Western Bulldogs, I thought. Anyway,
Four.
the Swans, I didn't watch this game, 16-14, 1-1-0 to the Suns 9-7-61, but the Suns just keep on delivering jack shit.
Yeah, well, look, yeah, not much to report about that. But he's got a game, and he should too. Elbow to the head, and the South Australian boy,
John
Stevens.
Stevens.
Yeah, he played a very good game.
Yeah, I heard he played pretty well.
Stevens, he played. Yeah,
Yep.
not much else to say about it.
And then after our game, of course, we had the Essendon Bombers, a demolition job, I should say, over Hawthorn 19-10-124 to Hawthorn 9-11-65.
No, look, we started to watch, but there was too much talking going on, so I didn't bother watching, to be honest, Fee. So I haven't got much to tell you there.
And in the last game, St Kilda, after Freo were up for most of the game, by judging by the scores that I was watching, 10-7-67, St Kilda, Fremantle 7-10-52.
Yeah.
Freo would be extremely disappointed with that.
Well, they looked winners at three-quarter time, and then in the last quarter, it was all St Kilda, 4-0. Freo would be very disappointed with that, but not much else to say. But out of the round, I did tell you that I think, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, West Coast, they're going to be bottom sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to pick the bottom teams early doors than the top teams. I think, early season throws up some weird results, but those teams that you mentioned seem to be pretty much a lock for, the bottom 8 and probably the bottom 4, to be honest with you. The Hawthorns look, pretty average, and I didn't think much of West Coast. North Melbourne could jump up just a little bit, depending on what probably the Suns do, I think, and probably what we do in Essendon. But yeah, I don't think there'll be much movement at the bottom. It'll be interesting to see what happens as we progress through the season.
Yeah.
All right, mate, moving on to our game, and it was a pretty nasty affair, unfortunately. Adelaide going down to the GWS Giants, 12-18-90 we scored, 12-18-90 to the Giants, 15-16-106. So in the end, 16 points. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, mate, I felt like we just kept him in the game. Had we kicked straight, we would have been probably 6 or 7 in front, and you knew GWS were going to come at some stage, and we just didn't give ourselves enough of a margin to play with, and once they got momentum, we weren't able to stop them, and that was probably the tail of the tape, really.
Yeah, look, we absolutely dominated the first half, and as you say, we should have really been up by that. And some of the shots that we missed were atrocious. Even like Fogarty missing a sitter. I mean, we just wasted probably at least 2, maybe 3 goals more. And as you say, that would have given us a little bit more of a buffer. But by the same token, it doesn't alter the fact that our second half was very, very dismal. There's not much I can say that made me very happy about the second half. I can probably only think of about 4 players that I could give a tick to for the second half.
Yeah, look, watching the game, and I've got to give a shout out to those that were in our stadium channel for the game today, because my God, did they melt? They melted something chronic. There was massive melts going on in the Discord channel, and look, it was disappointing. We looked so good early, but as it turned out, I think that was because GWS didn't show up early. We were able to get first use, and we were able to move the ball, and we had a lot of uncontested possession in the first quarter and half of the second quarter. And then you just saw our pressure start to drop off about halfway through the second quarter, Mac, and it looked like to me, or I think I even said in the chat at the time, we we really need that halftime siren just to regroup. What disappointed
That's a very
me,
good point.
what disappointed me was in the third quarter, we didn't come out firing, and we let them get right back into the game quite quickly. And then it was a bit of a scrap, and we, despite them being short on the bench, we looked pretty cooked as well. Our pressure stats dropped right away, and we weren't able to get over the line.
Yeah, look, somebody said that Burgess's fitness may not be what we thought it would be. I will make one particular point. It was 36 degrees and it was very, very humid. Now, we've trained it down here in 36 degrees, but we haven't trained in the level of humidity you experience in Sydney. So that's not an excuse for the boys. I'm just saying that in terms of the fitness, that would have been very, very sapping in terms of running around in 36 degrees and high humidity at the same time. And our team certainly wasn't used to that. So but that's not an excuse. It's just one of the factors they had to play in. Because GWS had other factors, for example, like they had. You have a look at the amount of interchange they used. They didn't nowhere use all of their interchange because of the
they only had two on the bench.
They had 3 players injured. Yeah, only 2 on the bench.
Yeah. Look,
but there were some good things that came out of the game, but Macca, there's a lot that the coaches have to look at.
Macca, look, last week when we were talking about the game, we basically said that we were stronger up forward, we were stronger down back, and what we had to do was contain their midfield. And what we weren't able to do today is contain their midfield. Kelly, Caniglio, and Green in particular destroyed us. Green destroyed Rory Laird, and on top of them destroying us, our prime movers Berry and Laird in particular had very quiet games. Harry Schoenberg had a shocker, so we weren't getting effective use out of the middle and around the ground. We were getting out muscled. And Riley O'Brien, again, apart from taking a couple of good grabs, had a pretty ordinary day in ruck, I felt.
Yeah, well, Gumby, as I now refer to him as, because he is a big Gumby. I thought he tries. Look, he does. He gives 100%, but he's a Gumby. He just hasn't got the ability and the class. He just hasn't got it. And, I can remember he got 3 beautiful taps straight down orange jumpers. They were his clear hits. So I can't remember one being doing it the other way around to our player. Having said that about the midfield, I thought Berry 12 disposals and 1 tackle. What the hell was going on there for him? One tackle.
Yep, completely out of sorts.
I can't believe it. And you don't necessarily. You'll have days where you can't get the ball, but you can tackle somebody. You can do that. So I was very disappointed in Berry's game totally.
And Laird, Sam's usually a tackling machine. That's the thing. Sam is usually a tackling machine. I know. And Lairdy, well, they did tag the living daylights out of him, and it worked very, very well. But no, look, they have a quality midfield. Kelly was absolutely slaughterous until he went off, and Green was just getting massive possessions as well, and then the young bloke, the one they took at the draft, Callahan. Yeah, he decided to join the party in the second half as well. Yep.
So, from our midfield point of view, ironically, in the first half, I thought Riccelli was our best midfielder. I thought he looked very good.
Yep.
But he's small. We need strong players around him to help him, and that didn't happen.
Look, mate, what I saw again, and unfortunately I don't have any vision tonight because the AFL media hasn't put together the vision yet, and you can't copy KO anymore, which sucks. But we seem to go back to that too worried about the body in centres contests. We're far too worried about contact rather than making position. And the connection between Riley O'Brien and our midfielders is horrific. There were so many times where O'Brien got a clear tap, but he just put it to nowhere or put it to their advantage. And I'll maintain that O'Brien doesn't have very good spatial awareness when it comes to where he needs to put the ball to our midfielders' advantage. But I don't think our midfielders help. I don't think our midfielders actually help because half the time they're trailing their opponent to the ball.
Well, I think both those points are relevant, Dean. I would hate to actually, be trying to shark to O'Brien because you just wouldn't know where the ball's going to go. He might tell you it's going to go somewhere, but he usually goes somewhere else. And but GWS showed that they showed that you don't necessarily have to be the one that gets the ball all the time. In the sense that if they had two of our who we regard as our prime midfielders in Laird and Berry, and they managed to tag them out of the game. Yet we couldn't do the same. You won't always get the ball tapped straight to you. You've got to earn it in a lot of cases. But we were incapable of doing that.
What surprised me at times, mate, was their lack of use of Ben Keys in the middle. Keys didn't get a run in centre rotations until the last quarter. Now, I thought they might use him early just to quieten down one of their big three. But early it was very much Rochelle, Berry and Laird with a bit of Schoenberg and Rankin. And I just thought that particularly in the second half of the second quarter when they started to get on top a little bit, that's when I thought that it'd be a good time just to throw Ben onto the ball and play with a bit of vigour. We didn't need class at that point. We just needed to reignite our pressure because the pressure had dropped off halfway through that second quarter, and we just needed someone around the contest that was going to spark that pressure again. And they kind of left him out high and dry on the forward line, and I didn't think that was a good move or non-move by Nicks, to be honest.
Well, I totally agree with you. I'm reading in the chat that one comment said he's not up to it, another one said that he can't kick it, it's embarrassing, and sometimes that's true. But I thought today, if you compare his efforts to the many of the other ones who are supposed to be a lot better players, I thought Keys played better than they did. I thought that he was still giving it 100% at the end, and he was still running on when the others were just walking around and chasing us. And I agree with you, Fiend. I think he should have been put in the middle at least to try and put some vigour in there.
I mean, I think it's a bit of a simplistic analysis to say, Ben Keys can't kick, because I didn't see him kick any clangers today. He went at 76% disposal efficiency, and we needed someone in there, not so much to be clean out of the contest, but to nullify what they were doing out of the contest. And you need a scrapper. Usually that's Sam Berry for us, but Sam was off the boil, and I would have chucked Sam down forward for a while and given Ben Keys a run just to lift the pressure gauge a little bit, particularly when they started getting on top. Anyway, look, let's before we go any further, why don't we just run through some stats, shall we? Because that's what we do. All right, so I'll run through the team stats. Disposals 375 to them, 318 to us. Kicks 208 to 217. Handballs 167, 101. You can see that all on the screen. Disposal efficiency was quite even. Efficiency inside 50 was quite even, which is mostly our first half. Free kicks, the umpires certainly didn't help us in the last stanza, Macca. There were a couple of questionable ones. What do you think?
Oh, I thought that, 3 or 4 questionable ones, and actually 2 of them cost us goals too. So it did have an influence on the game to some degree. Maybe we wouldn't have won, but there were 2 that did very, very questionable ones that did result in goals.
Yeah, the front on contact to Rory Laird that got given to Toby Green for high contact. Green's initiated contact front on to Sloan on their half forward line, and the umpire's giving them the pill. I couldn't work that one out. And there was a couple of others, but look, it certainly wasn't the difference. And look, just to say, I apologise. Macca and I have tried to sort out my audio on Discord. So if you are listening on Discord, it might get scratchy. maybe mute Discord and listen to the YouTube feed because it's clear on YouTube. And I'll have to try and sort that out because that's been a couple of weeks in a row now. What else have we got? Our clearance numbers, 35 to 33, even though O'Brien dominated the hit-outs. Centre clearance is 16 to 14 in their favour. Stoppage clearances, 19 apiece. They killed us around possessions, 129 to 111 contested possessions, 236 to 199 uncontested possessions. And I'll chuck up a couple of graphs in a minute to show you how those stats progressed over the course of the game, because it's quite noticeable how they started to get the ball on the outside as the game went on. Marks, we took more marks again, a lot of them early. Marks inside 50s was even, contested marks was even, tackles were even, but look at this stat, Mac. Tackles inside 50. 18 to zip.
That was shocking. That was disgraceful. I mean, and that was very, very apparent in the game, because every time when they got in their forward line, you're on the edge of your seat, because they always seem to have a man loose somewhere, and which means, but they also didn't do a lot of bombing of the ball in the second half. They brought it in a little bit. They did spread a lot. They spread, and that sort of makes it a lot harder to get the tackle situation going.
Macca, this is tackles inside our forward 50, mate.
No, what I'm saying,
we laid zero tackles.
That's one of the reasons why we weren't as good in tackling as we should have been, apart from the lack of effort. But they actually, whereas in our forward line, they did crowd our forward line, and we helped them do that. But look, 18 to 0 is disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful.
So it begs the question, mate, because we've got a lot of stars there. We've got a lot of, big name players, Rankin and Rochelle, and, the only there's probably two blokes in there that you'd think would lay a tackle, and that's McAdam and Benny Keys. Have we got the balance right? Are we missing, dare I say it, someone like a Lockie Murphy, just to provide a little bit of grunt in there?
Well, after today's game, mate, I don't know. I'm sort of flattened after that. You have to have a really good think about it and have a look at the replay. But it just, it's the first game of the year. Whether you say that and forgive it and move on and see what happens in the second game, I don't know. Or whether you do make a lot of changes. I wouldn't be making a lot. I'll be just making maybe perhaps one or two, but I'm a bit with the chat. I don't think Murphy is necessarily the answer, but then again, he would not have played worse than a lot of our guys did in the second half.
Well, I don't think Murphy's the answer either, but I guess my point is that you can't expect your defence and your midfield to continue to hold the ball up like we did in the first quarter and a half if you're not making it difficult for the opposition to get it out of defence. And they were able to get it out of defence pretty easily, which means that we're continually under pressure, and on transition we're out of position. And as the game wore on, that became a big factor. And I certainly hope that one of the stats that Nixie puts up on the board on Monday is that stat, because not being able to lay a tackle in 4 quarters of football, particularly as the game wore on and the game slowed down and it wasn't quite as fluid, not being able to lay a tackle is just horrific, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm interested, to what other people think about the game, because if you go by how we played in the first half, I was, except for perhaps the last 10 minutes of the second quarter, I was very buoyant in the first half, because I thought we've got Rochelle zooming out of centre, we've got Rankin zigzagging everywhere and sadly missing a couple of shots, but we had players running all over them in all directions, and I was thinking to myself, yes, we are finally going to become a decent team, and as been mentioned before, on the intensity ratings. Ours are through the roof and much higher than theirs. But then it's the same old story. There's a massive kick in the knackers in the second half, and you're looking at, and then all of a sudden the same team that you thought was so good in the first half, you look at it and you think, what a mob of no-hopers. And all of a sudden your thoughts are, we're going to be down the bottom 4 or 5 again.
Well, you talk about the first half. It's not the first half. It's probably the first quarter and a half, really. We were barely hanging on after about midway through the second quarter, barely hanging on. And the problem is that what got us into such a good position was something that we're not really known for, apart from what we've seen in the first couple of trial games, and that is a lot of good pinpoint quick passing and spreading the contest a little bit and opening up gaps for our forwards. But our trademark, the thing that I was hoping would get us over the line when the going got tough, was completely missing after quarter time. Our pressure on the ball and at the contest was completely missing, and you could see it was palpable. You could see it halfway through the second quarter. It just completely fell away.
It was fading at that stage, and then it just never came out in the second half.
Yeah, and I understand, the weather and the heat and the humidity and all the rest of it, and the ground didn't look in fantastic nick and yada, yada, yada. But the simple fact is we weren't at the contest. We weren't at the contest. So I just want to chuck up a couple of just comparative stats here, just quickly, if I can find the damn thing. Let's have a look. Okay. So, let's just go down here. You can see, just want to look at a couple of, you can see how our centre clearance numbers really dropped off, or how much they lifted after quarter time, Mac. We weren't getting, I remember a couple of Rochelle clearances that were really clean. I remember Jake Saligo doing a bit of work in there. But after quarter time, it really started to drop off. Our contested possession numbers were down for the whole game, but it was our uncontested possession numbers that showed the tail of the tape. You could see the gap widening from halfway through the first or second quarter, really. They were starting to get the ball far more on the outside, and we just weren't able to match it. What's another one that I saw? There was another one that I saw here. No, that's not it. It escapes me now, but there's a couple of key indicators that... where is it? Our inside 50s numbers, like we ended up sort of only 8 down on them or something or other. You could see like we were miles up early in the game, but we hardly got the ball into inside 50, and that's because our transition game completely broke down, Macca. We weren't able to get the ball past halfway. We were getting broken down across half forward. They switched it up a bit and were playing a little bit. I think they got one back. They were playing one back, and at times they were even playing 2 back, I think. And they were actually doing to us what we were doing to them in the first quarter, because in the first quarter, we basically compressed the ground and we had our backs playing really high, and they weren't able to break through. And they basically turned the tables on that after half time, and were doing something quite similar to us, and we just couldn't. We didn't have the run. Our midfielders weren't providing the options to be able to break through on that.
Well, they didn't really have the ball very much in the second half, but that was a major problem. Yeah, I must admit, I'm a little bit down as a result of the game, because what it did show is the fact that players that we thought were going to, and if you go by the trial games, players that we thought were going to be up at a higher level this year than they were last year, they weren't, and they just fell into the same old habits. I mean, one player in particular I really want to pick on, because I am sick and tired of him, and that's Smith. I mean, I think it was 8 times he turned the ball over with his kicks. 8 times. Just if we keep playing players like Smith, he's supposed to be one of our good players. I think he's even in our leadership group, isn't he? And yet you got him and just getting the ball and just booming it to nobody.
Well, let's have a look at Smith's numbers. In terms of his disposals, he had 4 clangers, he had 3 contested possessions, had 16 disposals for the game, 13 of which were effective, 2 handballs, 7 his uncontested possessions were only 9. This is the difference with Brodie from him pre-knee, I reckon. He's not getting the ball as much on the outside as what he used to. And the only place that he's really effective now is on the outside. We've got better one-on-one defenders than Brodie Smith. And I feel like if he's not getting the ball on the outside and giving us an outlet, like Seedsman did when he was playing and like, Dawson does when he's free, he's not much use.
I totally agree. We really need more quality in our defence. And in fairness to them today, you wouldn't want to be in defence with the way the ball was brought in the second half. Very, very hard. But look, Smith in particular stands out because he is the senior player down there. And Duday did reasonably well, but I remember when he was on the ground once and he taps it the wrong way. He taps into the centre. Instead of tapping it to the boundary, he taps it into the centre. They got a goal out of it. Just the guys are supposed to be leaders down back. They just don't lead.
Well, I mean, I don't know about not leading, Matt, to be honest with you.
Setting the example, mate.
Well, Geordie Dawson's down back.
That's why he's down back, mate. I mean, the idea when we got him, we didn't get him to play down back. He was supposed to be playing on the wing and driving the ball into our forward line all the time. But because of our lack of quality defenders, that's why he's had to go back.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you. What's going on? The problem, I guess, is that. Sorry, just bear with me a sec. The problem is that we are still easy to shut down. Like Geordie Dawson wasn't terribly effective. He tried very hard, but he wasn't terribly effective. And they did very good work at shutting down our key playmakers, Mac. And that's something that we weren't able to do to them.
Oh, that is an excellent point because as we said about Laird and Berry, for example, who are usually driving the ball in a lot. And I mean, Laird, he averages in the 30s, 30-something possessions, and he was nowhere near that. And Berry, for example, he had about half of what he normally had. So, yeah, just not good.
And that's the thing. When your key playmakers, I'll just chuck up Geordie's stats here while we're talking about. When your key playmakers aren't getting a lot of the ball, and when you rely on them so much, then we're quite easy to shut down. Dawson had 23 touches, 20 of which were effective, 16 effective kicks, 4 handballs, 14 uncontested possessions. Defensively, he was quite good. He had 5 defensive pressure acts. He had 2 intercept marks, which is a little bit down, and that's where they got him, right? Because normally Dawson's the guy that will float across the pack and take a grab, and he wasn't able to do that today. They were able to keep him out of those contests. 5 pressure acts, 9 rebound 50s, and 1 spoil. Defensively, didn't do a lot at the other end of the ground. Had a goal assist, 3 inside 50s, only 8 score involvements, 4 score launches. So, they kept him out of the game pretty much, didn't they?
Well, yes and no, in the sense that he was off for a while when he had, I think it was a clash of heads that took place, and He was off with the blood rule for a while. They kept him to, by his standards, a reasonably moderate game, but by comparison to his teammates, it was still a good game by comparison to his teammates.
Now, look, there are a couple of shining lights, and I felt one of them was Josh Rochelle. Josh Rochelle, I felt, played for a kid in his whatever year it is, second year or whatever. He did really well. Had a lot of, I think he ended up with, he had 10 or 12 centre bounce attendances. He had 18 disposals, 14 effective. Pardon me, 14 kicks, 4 handballs, 13 uncontested possessions, 7 contested possessions. In terms of his pressure at the contests, he had 2 ground ball gets and 1%. So he's not really getting the ball in tight. Like, he's getting the ball in tight spaces, but he's not winning contested ball terribly much. In terms of his centre work, he had 2 centre clearances, 1 stoppage clearance, which was good. And then attacking wise, he kicked 3 goals, 1, 3 inside 50s, 9 score involvements. So I reckon it was a pretty good game from Josh Rochelle, to be honest with you.
I had him as our best player, Fane. I thought he was had an excellent game, and he did a bit of everything. You know, he did, as you say, he did a bit of some of his work in the centre. 2 or 3 times was very nice, and other times in the forward line, there's some really nice stuff he did. And then he also finished off, as you say, kicking 3 goals himself. I just liked his game all round. I just thought it was a good game, and he got my number 1 vote for our players anyhow.
Yep, and he was one of the few players that didn't drop off, Mac. That was the thing that I liked about him. He was fairly consistent throughout the course of the game, whereas a lot of our other players, they did drop off after a while. If we have a look at his disposal graph here, I'll just put that up real quick. It was fairly consistent throughout the course of the game, Josh Rochelle. So, he certainly stuck with it. He had 12 possessions up to half-time, which he had an excellent first half, but still had 18 for the game, so that wasn't bad at all. Who else did you like, mate?
I thought he looked classy every time he had the ball. He looked classy.
Yeah. Who else did you like?
Well, look, nobody's going to. I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me, but I was looking for gold nuggets amongst a heap of turds, and it's very hard. So, on the positive side of things, as I say, Rochelle was our best player, and I still think Dawson made a very good positive contribution to the team. Keys, I thought, got a bit of rubbishing, but I like the fact that Keys kept running and trying hard when everybody else was just giving up. And so I was not down on Keys. I'm normally often bag him for his kicking and all the rest of it, but I thought Keys wasn't all that bad today. And on top of that, I thought Keys, at least he had his heart and soul in it, and he was still going at the end when a lot of others that just they'd waved the white flag and said you can have the ball. I thought Rankin at times showed some really, really classy stuff. Unfortunately, he didn't have his accurate kicking boots on. I think he kicked 2 goal 5. Was that right?
Yep.
2 goal 5. And look, in fact that was 5 goals too. Well, again, it maybe turns the game on its ear. But the one other one which there was a real big plus in the game was,
before you go on with that, that's what Isaac's in the team for, Mac, and he's got to be better than that. I mean, to be honest with you, I felt our bad kicking cost us the game. We got a fast start. We didn't make the most of it. We kept them in the game, and we gave them just enough of a sniff to run over the top of us. Imagine if we'd have been 6 or 8 goals in front, which is where we probably should have been, instead of only 3 or 4 goals. That's almost a bridge too far. And it would have allowed Nix to be able to shut the game down a little bit more, and it'll allow us to close up. Isaac's got to be better than that. Our forward line has to convert, and I hope he has a good think about it, because he can't be kicking 2-5 every week. That's wasteful.
Look, well, you can't argue against that, Fiend. As you say, it was very, very costly. And if he had kicked 5 goal 2 or maybe 6 goal 1, well, then we probably got a different result in the game. But The one thing I did like when he was up, at least he was up and about. It would have been worse if he hadn't touched the ball and he had a couple
Yeah,
of
but he was only
possessions.
up. He's only up and
So,
about. This is my problem with Rankin, Mac. He's only up and about offensively. There was a couple of times, and someone pointed out in the chat, and I saw it as well. I think the Surf Sides pointed out in the chat. He was letting Hayes run off him, and a couple of times Hayes was able to come over the top of a contest, one that I remember with Walker. And Isaac's got to be better than that. He's got to be better than that.
well,
That whole forward half pressure needs a lot of work.
I agree. I totally agree. And I liked Luke Pedlar's game. I thought Luke Pedlar was
very
a
much.
positive in the game, and you can see that in time he'll probably go into the mid. I think he played as a mid as a young guy. Is that right, Clean?
It's a midfielder. Yeah, he's a midfielder. He played a bit mid-forward, but you can see, like, I'm not shying away from my comparison with Gary McIntosh on Lukey Pedlar. He's an absolute bulldozer, and a couple of the hits that he laid, I remember one clash that he had with a GWS player where they both went for the ball and they both turned side on it, and the commentators noted what a good contest it was.
He is tough.
He will
tough.
not shirk
There's no doubt
anything,
about it.
and he's a good kick too. Let's just have a look at Pedlar's stats real quick. He had 13 disposals from a forward line. He did get up the ground a little bit. 10 effective disposals, 11 kicks and 2 handballs. He had 9 uncontested possessions. I've got the hiccups now. That's not good. He had 4 ground ball gets, 1 percenter. In terms of his defensive work, he had 5 pressure acts, 1 intercept mark, 4 intercept possessions, 10 pressure acts, 2 rebound 50s, and 1 spoil. So he was getting up and down the ground, Macca, because he's doing some work in defence there. 2 goal assists, kicked goal, 4 inside 50s, 1 mark inside 58 score involvements. So not a bad game at all from Luke Pedlar, and certainly earned his spot.
I thought very good game. Very good game. I liked it.
Yeah.
And the other bloke who I thought I would give a bit of kudos to, and I thought not that it was outstanding or starry or anything like that, but for a bloke playing his first AFL game, I thought Macca, I thought he did not disgrace himself one little bit. In fact, I thought it was quite useful.
Yep, certainly. Played quite well with the opportunities that he got. Only one time, which wasn't really his fault, because the kick out to him was at his toes, and he fumbled.
I remember
not his fault at all. But quite solid. Looks very light, but was able to hold his own. So I don't think he did himself any harm at all. Look, so overall, I found myself, Macca, when I was reading the chat during and after the game, I found myself not being as disappointed with the game as many were, because we've got to remember that we are a middle of the table team. We're sort of, a lot of people picking us sort of 8 to 12. It was GWS's home game. They've got a new coach, so they've got the new coach bounce. They've got, I still think, probably one of the best 4 midfields in the competition in terms of their class and maturity. And, and the heat was pretty stifling. A lot of people are writing us off and sack the coach and sack this and sack that. I'm not there yet at all.
No, but look, it was disappointing in the sense that, like, at half time, even though we had been fading a little bit, we got 1 goal just before half time off a memory, which sort of gave us the lead back to the standard that we were hoping it was going to be around about just under the 5 goals. At that stage, I mean, so I had my family over. There was quite a lot of us and a lot of happy people, and we thought, well, maybe we're going to be a good footy team this year. Well, there's a lot of swearing going on the second half, that's all I can say. There was not a lot to like about our second half.
Look, the thing is, though, Macca, that's where we're at. A couple of people in the chat are saying, how can you call GWS a top four midfield? Let's not forget that midfield got them to a grand final 2 years ago. Or 3 years ago, or whatever it was. It's not it's not a bad midfield at all. You've got Tom Green, who's probably one of the better midfielders in the comp and will go close, I think, to winning a Brownlow this year. You got Kelly and Caniglio, whose name I can never say. They lost Perryman early. Yeah, they lost Perryman early. It's a mature, classy, solid midfield. And, when you have a look at the frame of those guys compared to the frame of most of the blokes that we were throwing in there, we're still developing. We're still developing. And to go down in the end by 16 points on their home deck in round one in the heat, when last time we played them they belted us by however much it was, a lot more. It's not a terrible result as far as I'm concerned. Not at all.
No, actually, look, in terms of what you said, I don't think anybody could argue against what you said. That I do think GWS are a much better side in their position on the ladder was last year. Yep, they've lost a couple of players, went to Richmond, good players, but they had a lot of other good mids waiting for their turn. So, and they played very well today. So I agree with what you're saying, but I just think you've got to have a classy midfield, and we haven't got that. And when I look back, and I hate saying this because I keep saying it all the time.
I'm gonna shut you down right there. I'm not gonna do this, right? I am not gonna do it. He doesn't play for us. Macca. He doesn't play for us, right? There is this. We could say this every week because you know how I feel about that kid. You know how salty I was that we didn't get him. But if we continue to go, if you continue to go on with our drafting and all the rest of it, let's just deal with what's in front of us, right?
We do have to deal with what's in front of us, but I do think I'm just sick and tired of the fact that other teams have got they use their pick for quality mids, and we just don't. That's just one really shitty about it.
Well, you just said that Josh Rochelle was probably one of our best players, and Josh Rochelle Rochelle played a good portion of the game in the midfield.
Yeah, but what I am trying to say to you, Speen, is that the position we're in is because of the past of before the Rochelle, those years when we just burnt about 3 or 4 good picks. I mean, Miller, is he a good number one pick? No, he's not.
I reckon we've spent about 2 years. I reckon we've spent about 2 years of this podcast talking about it, and I don't see the point of talking about it any longer. I really don't.
Well, that's one of the reasons. The only reason I raise it is because that's why we are where we are.
But we raise it every week, Macca. Every week we raise it.
All right, but I promise you, I won't raise it next week.
No, we won't be raising it again this season. We have to deal with what's in front of us. And I don't disagree with your thoughts. You know that. My thoughts on the matter are well and truly on public record. But the simple fact of the matter is we have to look at what's in front of us. We have to look at the positives of the team that's on the deck at the moment. And there were a lot of positives. There's a few worries. Riley O'Brien is a big worry. Harry Schomburg has gone backwards in his development and is a big worry, in my opinion. We were really exposed when Murray went down, and he wasn't right for a good portion of the game with that corky. So we're a little bit short down back, and we lack a bit of class through the midfield. So absolutely, we've got gaps in our list, 100%. But I'm not going to spend time with the what ifs because it's absolutely pointless to talk about the what ifs.
Okay. Well, let's move on.
All right.
But
go on.
I was going to say, you mentioned Murray. He actually started the game very well and very strongly, and
He did.
yeah, he had that injury. Well, he had an incident where he got injured in it, and he didn't look as good after that thing.
No, he got a pretty bad cork, which is why they ended up subbing him off. He stayed out there apparently for as long as he could. The other thing that I thought was really weird. Now I thought Tyler Brown, when he came on, he gave us a little bit of energy, but he attended the next 6 centre bounces. Is he that good, or were we just that cooked?
Oh,
I think that's indicative of how cooked our midfield was.
That was a desperation move. It's a desperation move because our midfield was going that poorly, and yeah, look, as you said, I think it was 6. You said he attended 6. Was that right?
He attended the first, I think 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We just he we had one disposal. No good.
Yeah. No. Good. So look, a couple of good signs in the twos. Riley Thilthorpe had a really good game. Ruck for most of it, kicked 4 goals. Apparently was pretty dominant around the ground. Elliot Himmelberg I thought was disappointing. Didn't give us enough of a target, Mac. If he's going to play that role where he's not necessarily going to be the focal point but needs to be the conduit, then he needs to be better than what he was today.
Yep. Well, how did you rate Himmelberg today?
Oh, I just said that. I just said
he
was disappointing.
But do you think he should be in next week or not?
Well, no, that's just what I asked you. If he's going to play that role, if Elliot's going to be in that role where he is the conduit, then he needs to be more aggressive at the contest. I thought he rucked okay. I thought he rucked better than O'Brien. I think he's a more effective ruckman than O'Brien at ruck contests. Not so much around the ground.
Again, I reckon he had 4 taps for him.
Yeah, he did only have 4 taps, but he wasn't in the ruck for that much.
Yeah, I reckon if we're going to pay him, I think we should be paying Riley Thilthorpe.
Well, that was going to be my question. You know my thoughts on how I think they want to use Riley Thilthorpe, but how long do we persevere with Elliot if he's not going to give us the numbers that we need? That's not to say that. I mean, Riley hasn't proven that he's able to play that role in the A's either as yet. He had a good game in the twos in a trial game against Glenelg today or yesterday, whenever it was. Kick 4, as I said, rucked pretty well, was around the ground a fair bit. He's clearly the future, but bringing a kid in to be a major conduit at 20 years of age is just asking too much.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't play him as your only ruck. No, I agree with that. You couldn't do that. But I don't know. I just think that I don't know whether he's got a self-belief problem or not. Why they're not playing him, but and I know he hasn't really. He started his career well and then hasn't performed quite as well. But I mean, he has got talent to burn. He really has. He's just got to believe in himself and then produce it. But I still think it always will be as a. I don't know whether it won't be a permanent ruckman. He won't be the number 1 ruck. That's not my. We really need a good number 1 ruck, and that he's actually your number 2 ruck, resting up forward. That's what I think.
Well, that's not what
Walker's going to be gone
last month.
Yeah, but Walker's going to be gone in a year or 2. Then by then, you want Thilthorpe to be the guy. You've got Fogarty, and you need Thilthorpe to be the other tall up there.
I still think Thilthorpe will end up being our ruckman. But the question right in front of us right now is, do we bring him in next week or do we give Elliot another run? Because I don't think they'll drop O'Brien. I think the one that Thilthorpe would be most likely to come in for would be Himmelberg.
Look, I think they probably won't. I think they'll probably play him another one in the twos, and tell him that if he plays as well as he did this week, then he will be pushing for a spot in the side. I don't know that you can actually beat me on just the one game thing.
No, I don't think so either. We do also have Worrell to come back in. We also, given that McAdam, I reckon, will get a couple. What do you think? Do you reckon McAdam will get 2?
Look, if you have a look at the incident, he actually his point of impact was the chest, but it went up onto the chin, and that's what's going to get him into trouble. I would think it's only a 1, but because he's a Crows player, he'll probably get 2.
I don't know, mate. It was a good old-fashioned shirt front, if you ask me. Launched down. It wasn't that dissimilar to Pickett's, to be honest with you.
Sorry, it wasn't dissimilar to
Pickett's.
Oh no, Pickett was airborne. Pickett was airborne.
Yeah, well, McAdam was driving up with McAdam was driving up when he hit him.
Well, if his feet are off the ground, if he had gone in the air to hit him, well then he will be in trouble.
Yeah.
But
anyway, look, the point is that
he got 2 Pickett, so I reckon McAdams is a 1.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I think he'll miss next week. Lockie Glant in some reasonable nick in the 2s. So he would be the logical in. The only caveat on that, as I mentioned before, was probably the lack of defensive pressure. Whether they think they need someone else in there that can provide that pressure, which could see, I know people hate this, but could see McHenry or Murphy back in for McAdam.
Well, somebody's going to come in to replace McAdam. There's no doubt about that. So it's probably one of those 2, yeah.
Have you been drinking?
I had been. I had been earlier.
Oh, that explains
I told
a
you
lot.
we had the family over, mate.
That explains a hell of a lot. Oh, mate.
Well,
we will replace. If McAdam does get a week, we probably will replace him, Macca. That's probably the best thing you've said all week. The other one that was quite prominent in the 2s was Zach Taylor. Probably not quite ready yet, but good to have another one. But again, as a small lad, hard to see him being a strong midfielder. So, it just shows that we're still middle of the pack. I think this game, we're still middle of the pack against quality midfield. I think our forward line has the potential to be quite potent. There's still a couple of gaps to fill. It's probably fairly indicative of where we're at the moment, Mac.
I don't think they make massive changes, to be honest.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that the Nix's approach will be, we showed in the first half that we can play a very good brand of football, and we just have to be able to replicate that in the second half of a game as well as the first. But, I mean, obviously got to be, as we just worked out, there's going to be one replacement. But I don't know whether any... I can't think of any player that will be dropped.
Schoenberg, they'd have to think about Schoenberg.
Schoenberg, yeah, well, that's a possibility because I didn't like Harry's game, but I still don't think there should be massive changes after the game because the first half showed that they can actually play some very good football. The second half showed they can also fall apart, but that's neither here nor there. We're talking about in terms of what the changes should be. And also, I do agree. I thought Miller was poor. Miller doesn't do too much hard stuff, though. And I also don't think he's a tight checker.
So here's a question for you, because Lockie Chow had a pretty good game in the 2s. Outside player being criticised for not going hard. Wayne Miller is a very similar player in terms of his willingness to get his hands dirty. At the
He is.
moment, does Lockie
He is.
Scholl represent better value coming off that defensive side of the wing than Wayne Miller?
And look, that's probably worth some thought. You can, he's still part of the squad, and he is a very, very good user of the ball, and he's a very good getter of the ball. He won't go very well in a hard ball, but look, it would not upset me if Miller got dropped and they brought in Lockie Scholl.
Yeah, the big consideration, of course, is that we'll be coming off a short break next week. Richmond will be coming off almost a bloody 3-month break, having played on Thursday night. So, they'll be fit and ready to go.
Yeah, look, they've had a very good recovery time, and playing in 36-degree heat today, and then only a 6-day turnaround. It's not going to make it easy for us, put it that way.
No, well, that's it. And so it'll be interesting to see how. Look, statistically, Macca, it's not the first short turnaround that usually gets teams. It's the second. That's when if you look at average wins after breaks and all that sort of stuff. One short break doesn't tend to kill a side. 2 does, but I don't reckon you get too many of those statistics, including a 35-degree day in 70% humidity. So it'll be very interesting to see how they come up next week.
Yeah, I've been to Sydney, and I've been to Darwin, and I've been to Brisbane when they've got that bloody humidity, and actually it makes you so lethargic, and it really does take it out of you physically, and I hate it. I really hate the humidity, and playing footy in it at the pace that these boys do, it's got to have some effect on you. And
well, look, it does, and
I know
it's
that the locals had to play in it too, but they are a little bit more used to it.
Yeah, and it's about recovery. So I'd imagine they'd have a fairly light week on the track, and recover and regain their fluids and salts and all the rest of it. It was quite interesting to see how many from both teams were cramping up by the end of it. Not really surprising. But Richmond play that hustle bustle style of game that requires a bit of pressure. It'll be interesting to see what sort of game plan Nick's puts together next week. Did we see any evidence of a game plan this week, Mac?
We did in the first half, I thought. In the first half, we saw a lot of movement in the forward line and a lot of spaces being made. That disappeared out the window in the second half because the ball was coming from the back lines rather than from the centre. So when it's a different game. It's a totally different ball game when you're attacking from the centre of the ground rather than when you're trying to bring it back from the back lines. And in that first half, we were, there were quite a few very good movements from the centre of the ground and with options running in all directions. That's why we looked good. But in the second half, they just took over the midfield and we were trying to come back from the midfield, so you don't get that. So.
And I guess I guess my observation when clearly Nick's must have seen the effect the heat was having on our players. I didn't actually see any evidence of him trying to slow the game down at any point. I didn't see any evidence of him trying to give our blokes a breather by making it a bit of a contest for a while and putting numbers around the ball. He still seemed to want to play that flow-on football, which is very attractive when it's working. But it's clearly very energy-sapping as well. And, we've seen bits and pieces of it in the 2 trial games and now in this game. And, look, it's a very good style of play. Is it the type of game plan that is going to win you a grand final, Macca? Because the only team that I've ever seen being able to pull that kind of game plan off is Hawthorn.
Yeah, look, if you could play that type of game that we did in the first half for a full game, it'd be very, very hard to beat in any game. But as you say, it is a physically draining game as well. So the game that we're playing, and it's at its best, it's an intense game, and very, very hard to do that for the whole 4 quarters, and as we showed today. But I still just think, unfortunately, we're down on quality players. We're still playing several players that probably wouldn't get a game certainly in the top 8 sides, and I still think we've got another year or 2 of recruiting to do before we're going to make the 8.
Yeah, I think if you're going to play that type of game style, you have to do it in bursts. And I think you have to be very conscious of momentum. And we actually said it last week, Mac, when we were previewing this game, that the key to the game was going to be able to stifle GWS when the momentum turned their way. And I didn't see any evidence in our centre clearance work, the way we set up in the middle. We weren't defensive side. We weren't protecting defensive side at all in centre clearance, and I do have lots of question marks around how Van Berlo's got them set up there.
Well, we aren't capable of it, mate. That's why it didn't happen. We aren't capable of it.
No, but I mean, we're capable of setting up.
No, but in terms of playing it, the way our game is structured, we aren't capable when it goes pear-shaped of stopping the opposition, because we haven't got those type of players there to do that.
Well, I think that's absolutely wrong. I think you can change the way you play during the course of a game when momentum goes against you. And there are things that you can do. There are levers that the coaches can pull to make the game a scrap for a while. And I don't think our coaches did that today. I think they let the game flow and they tried to plug gaps with individuals. And like I said, one of the biggest things when you watch the game again, as I'm sure you will, you'll notice that even when they had momentum, we were not doing anything to block their outlets out of the middle. We weren't covering defensive side at all. So we were continually setting up to win the ruck contest without recognising that they had momentum out of that centre square. And I just feel like our centre square setups haven't really impressed me for a couple of years under Nick's, whether that's Nick's or whether that's Van Berlo, I'm not sure. And I just feel like we could have actually got more numbers up around the contest to make it harder for them to extract the ball and to slow the game down when the momentum shifted.
The only way I think we could have done that, Bean, is really just throw players back. In other words, play with less forwards and put players back, and then to try and work it up gradually. But if you do that, of course, you're not going to score too easily yourself, and you're going to turn the ball over a lot because you've got more. They've got more defenders than you've got forwards. But I think it probably would have been worthy of doing it for a while just to try and stem the flow.
Well, and sometimes that's all you've got to do. It's not necessarily about scoring. It's about stifling the opposition's momentum and their run. And to me, there was a case to be made probably the back after the second quarter, but certainly after about 10 minutes in the third, where we could, and it's not just about throwing numbers back, Macca, it's also about crowding the contest as well. I felt like we could have actually pushed more players in and around the contest, around stoppage, to make it harder for their outlets, because they were extracting the ball very easily out of stoppage in that second half.
Almost at will. And as you say, not enough pressure there, not enough congestion there. They were so clearly on top that you are right, we did have to try and congest it so they couldn't break out so easily.
They were getting it out of the back consistently out of stoppage, and we had no one covering that defensive side consistently.
Yeah, look, what I saw from today is that we've got a game plan that if it works, we look very, very good, but there is no plan B if it doesn't go good. There's no plan B.
That's right. Well, look, there has been plan Bs. I've seen different modes of play, but he didn't seem to be wanting to pull the lever today. He didn't want to flick the switch and change it up too much. He just seemed content. And look, maybe it was a personnel issue. I don't know, but he just seemed to content to throw players into holes rather than actually change things up. Now, we are interactive, Macca, as you know, and you're struggling under the weight of, I reckon, at least a bottle of red, maybe two. So we're going to bring Mick on just to straighten us up a bit.
Is that all, Feed?
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me, mate. How you going, Mick?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks, mate.
I think, unlike Macca, I'm not ready to sack the coach, get rid of all the players, and dissolve the club.
I haven't gone there yet, mate. I didn't go there.
Yeah, we're far off, I think, from the start of it. I did see. I think a lot of it had to do with our midfield. I haven't seen Laird play that badly in I don't know how many years.
Agreed.
I don't know whether it was playing badly. He was well held. And the same with Berry. We just couldn't get a centre clearance to save our lives in the second half. I think that's the major reason why we lost the game. Was one of the major reasons. The other one was inaccurate kicking in the first half. I think losing Murray had a lot to do with it too in the second half. Like losing him, their forwards just got on top, but they were just too tall.
Yeah, I do agree about the Murray situation because I thought that he actually stood out for a couple of really, really good clearances in the early stages, and then when he did get a bit wounded, when he came back, he certainly wasn't the same Murray that he was at the start of the game.
That first quarter, like he one out marking. I can't remember the name of the person, the forward. Yeah. That was brilliant. And after that, like we had to put Duday. I'm pretty sure it was Duday. We dropped back into his spot, and it wasn't. It was McElhaney, and he wasn't ready. Like we were just getting beaten as the ball was coming into the forward. But most of it had to do with the midfield. Like we were just smashed in the midfield.
Yeah, 100% destroyed in the midfield. Mick. Hey, Mick, what do you reckon about this? I still reckon that it wouldn't be a terrible shout to stick Muzzer at centre-half forward and bring Joshy Worrell back into defence. What do you reckon? I reckon Muzzer would be all right at centre-half forward.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. I've said it before. I'd love to see it because, I'd hate to be a backman with that crazy big bastard coming out because, yeah. He wouldn't care whether it's his own teammate or opposition. He'll kill you anyway. He'll either catch the ball, or at least bring it to ground. And I'd love to see that. I think he'd be a lot better in that position than the person we've got there now.
Yeah.
Look, he is fearless. There's no doubt about that. He is fearless.
Even in the ruck, I'd rather. Even that couple of games we saw him in the ruck, like relieving in the ruck, he mightn't get that many tap outs, but Jesus wants to hit the ground, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, it'd certainly make his opposition ruckman accountable. Oh, that's the thing, though. I love his energy, and I just feel like at times it's wasted down, well, not wasted down back, but we could actually get more out of it if we had him up around the ball a little bit more. And I guess, coaches like to hug benchmarks and all the rest of it at the moment, but they're the sort of little moves that you wouldn't mind just to change things up a little bit. Himmelberg's played down back, so during the course of a game, you could make that switch. Their tall forwards weren't particularly, dominant. Jesse Hogan was sort of in and out, and Butts had him relatively covered. I just feel like there was a case to be made for getting Murray involved. Obviously that got snuffed out once he got his corky, but I don't know. Keane's the one that can come in as well, I think.
Not so much the tall Keane. It was more like Green really got into the game. Once Green really started to fire.
Green always Green always kills us.
Yeah, and
Well, he
look,
kills a lot of
Well,
teams.
we just haven't got a match up for Green. We just haven't got a match up for a player like that. A dangerous mid-sized forward. We just have not got a match up for him. Duday, as much as I love him, he's just not. He's not good enough one-on-one to beat someone like that.
He's not
He's
strong
just
enough.
too quick, too strong.
Yeah,
very good point.
Toby Green's
he's just.
Toby Green's upper body strength
But
is highly
I don't-
underrated.
Yeah, it's out of control. I've got more faith in our system for next week than what a lot of people seem to have, because I can't see Lairdy playing that bad again. Like, he'll be pissed off on the way home. I would hate to be sitting next to him on the plane. He's not going to be happy with his game.
And Berry too. If you had
And Berry, yeah.
If you had those two playing their normal games, we would have won the game. There's no doubt about that. But
I agree.
When you talk about the number of possessions Lairdy's probably about 15 possessions light, and Berry's about 10 possessions light. That's about 25 midfield possessions light.
Well, and about 10 tackles from Berry as well.
We're probably down.
And tackles.
Yeah, and we're down. We were down probably 10 clearances between those two to what we usually have.
Yeah.
And to think that in the first half, I think that Rochelle was our best midfielder is a bit of a blight on the other two, and they better have a good hard look at themselves.
Yeah, Dylan makes a good shout in the chat. I reckon they could have tried Mitch Hinge on Toby Green. I reckon that's a reasonable matchup to try.
Yeah, well, we could have tried something. He tore us apart.
Yeah, and Hinge didn't do a hell of a lot.
Yeah,
of
I'm not as down. I'm not as down as everybody else is. I know it's not an excuse for the game, but I can't. I'm used to working in 40 odd degrees, during the day, 45 plus up here at Broken Hill. But I've gone to Sydney in the 32 degrees with that humidity, mate. And I'm battling to get out of bed.
I know.
So it's that would have sapped the shit out of them. I know it's not an excuse for the game, but I think it's actually more of a component than what people are giving it credit for.
Oh, I agree.
I agree.
They just weren't.
No, I agree with you, Mick, because of the fact that they are, while they still have to play in it too, they are much more used to it, and we are not. And
Acclimatised.
Yeah, acclimatised. It's a good word. And as I say, when I've been up in those areas with the humidity, it nearly kills me.
Yeah, I think even with our midfield defunctioning as bad as what it was, you had Murray not getting injured, not being so humid, and we actually kicked straight in the first half, we still would have won. Yep. So I still think that there is a good chance that we're not as bad as what we appeared to be. And I saw good signs. Pedler, we found a player there. Like he's going to be good.
Yep.
Rochelle was good. Rankin needs to start actually hitting the target and not thinking he's the world's greatest until he's actually after he kicked the ball. Kick the ball and then celebrate. I really, really like Rochelle. He's going to be top notch.
Agreed, Mick. Thanks for your thoughts, mate.
Hey, Mick.
Canceligo.
Last question for Mick. Would you make any changes, Mick?
Not loving Schoenberg, but in saying that, it's one game, and we've always carried on about dropping people after one game and not giving them a run. So I wouldn't make any forced changes, unforced changes for a couple of weeks. I'd give them a crack against Richmond before we drop anyone. Yeah, well, I suppose we've got to we obviously there's going to be one coming in, but no, other than that, I'd just give it another week and then we'll go from there, because anyone can have one bad game.
Fair comment.
Very good, mate.
Except for our ruckman. Can can we please trade the ruckman to North Broken Hill or something?
All right, mate. Good on you.
Something needs to happen there.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mate. Good on you.
Night.
And we got Gatesy. Come on board, Gatesy. How you going?
Hello, boys.
G'day, Gatesy.
I just want to say that I've put a hole in my wall and Sportsbet has taken $30 from me. I'm not very happy.
Right, well, we'll start
I
up a GoFundMe page for you, mate.
I think when Darcy Fogarty's missing, that's when you know it's bad. Because he doesn't miss. He shouldn't miss.
That kick was very fatigued, wasn't it?
That he did miss.
He looked very tired when he had that shot for goal.
Yeah, he did. In the last quarter or wherever it was. So Isaac Rankin had, 2 goals, 5?
Yep.
Yeah, so he needs to work on something there.
Probably
we could have used those
goal.
five goals.
All right, mate. Thanks very much for your input. Now, Mac, time for our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have you got it in you to give us some votes?
I can do it, mate. I can do it. And I don't think everybody will agree with me, but that doesn't matter. I gave 5 to Rochelle. I gave 4 to Dawson. I gave 3 to Keys, 2 to Pedler, and 1 to Rankin.
Yeah, I'm with you on Rash. I think he's 5. I struggle after that, though, to be honest with you. I actually give 4 to Rankin, despite his bad kicking. 3 to
I had to pay him low because of that.
3 to Dawson, 2 to Keys, and 1 to... Actually, 2 to Pedler and 1 to Keys, to be honest with you.
Yep, not upset with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We had such an even spread prior to the capitulation after half time, and yet really I don't think there's many more players that could have even gotten into that conversation, which shows you how much we fell away after half time.
Yeah. Look, I think Mick made a good point there before. It's only one game, and I must admit I got very down about it because I thought we were going to win the game.
I said that at the beginning of the bloody podcast, and you were giving me shit about it.
Pardon?
I said that at the beginning of the podcast, and you were giving me shit about it. It is only one game.
I have to say so. No, but in all seriousness, I've changed my mind. I'm going to cheer myself up, Dean.
Right, good.
Yeah, so we went... I
don't know whether he has, Vardy. I really don't think he has.
No, but the whole point is, I think if we could play a lot more of the football that we did in the first half, we could be a reasonably good side. If we played like we did in the second half, well, then we'll be a very ordinary side. But it is one game, and we'll just see what next game brings. If we're against Richmond, which is going to be a reasonably hard game, if we can put up a reasonable performance on that, if we could actually even win it, well, then you just put this one away as an anomaly. We could barely say it.
It would have been a nice one to win, mate, because we got 3 difficult home games. Richmond up next won't be easy. Then we got Port, obviously. I guess that'll be fairly easy. And I forget who the other one is. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back.
Well, Richmond have got a very good midfield too. I mean, Taranto, he had 30-something possessions. Hopper didn't do too badly, but and they've got they got a pretty good side. But so we'd have to play our very, very good, very best footy to win. Not saying we can't, but we'd have to do play as we did in the first half all game.
All right, just before we go, let's update people on the tipping competition, of which I suck, clearly. So a few people got 6. Paulie, Flash Crow, Cretato, Marco, Bradley, Sam, Stu, J-Mac, Seeds Girl, Baxter, all got 6. There's a few people on 5, and there's a couple of stragglers on 4. The good judges, Mick, me, Scoot, 1990. There's a lot of good blokes down the bottom end of that table. So where did I slip up? I was none for 3. I think I went the other way on the first 3 games, and that really killed me. And then of course St Kilda killed me as well. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go through the season. The fantasy results aren't in yet, so we'll update those in the Discord channel as they get updated on the site.
Yeah, I had a good game in fantasy. I did have a good game in fantasy myself, I think.
Yeah, nobody asked, mate.
2,100
Didn't ask.
Just thought I'd add it.
Yeah, well, you're not in our comp, so we don't care. All right, so I reckon that just about wraps us up, Macca. What do you reckon about next week? What were your chance?
As I said, if we played the type of the brand of footy that we did in the first half, if we could maintain it for a full game, of course we are. But we wouldn't. Well, if we played like we did in the second half, we won't win too many games of the year. So it's a bit of everything, isn't it? It's how we turn up. We're going to have the home game, home crowd. We've got all those things going for us. We've got a 6-day recovery period. That's a negative. But as Tomo says, we do have a good record against the Tigers at home. So it's not going to be. Well, I'd be very disappointed if it wasn't a good game and a close game at least, and possibly maybe even sneak it. Look,
I was pretty shocked that Richmond couldn't beat Carlton with all Carlton's midfield outs, and it was a relatively low-scoring game. I know the deck wasn't great, etc., etc. I think a lot will hinge on how we come up after the short break. If Burgess can freshen them up, then I think we'll get over the top of the Tigers. But if we're a bit flat, then we're going to get mown down. So I think it's either going to be a reasonable win or a demoralising loss, unfortunately. So anyway, time will tell. In the meantime, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and on Discord. Sorry about the disjointed start. It should be not surprising for anyone these days. Macca,
standard, mate. Standard.
Macca, I must admit, you're entitled to the occasional drink, and it's been quite entertaining. It took me about 20 minutes to work out that you were shit-faced, and then once I did, I realised I didn't have to take anything that you said seriously, and it went a lot better after that.
I don't know that I took it seriously, Fee. No, I did my best, mate.
You did, mate. You always do, and we're very grateful for it. Thanks everyone for joining us on both channels. Don't forget, get around our Discord server. Links are in the description. Until next week, stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you then. Night all.
Yeah, good night all.